Incentives drive behavior.
Former NBA basketball player Tim Hardaway was once promised big year-end bonuses for putting up a lot of assists. Who here has received a year-end bonus? One? Well, they can be pretty motivating, right? Would it surprise you to hear that he ended up passing a lot? Especially toward the end of the year, when he wasn't quite yet at his benchmark. While he was also a really great shooter, he wasn't incentivized based on good shots. He would go on later to say that even given the opportunity to shoot, occasionally he'd pass, because he just didn't have the same incentive. Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and honored guests, how are you incentivized in your career? Do these incentives drive you to make the right decisions on behalf of your team? No matter the motives or the rewards, it's a simple fact that incentives drive behavior. This can be a very powerful idea. However, if used improperly, it can be worse than ever providing incentives in the first place. And that's because motivation and incentives are a little difficult to think through. It's a lot easier to predict how Tim Hardaway, given his incentive plan, is going to react. But it's a little bit more difficult to understand how those actions translate into consequences for the team. When Tim Hardaway received his performance bonus, he was able to map out exactly what he needed to do to hit his goal. His coach, on the other hand, made his own calculations. But then he thought, Tim's just going to do what's best for the team. That misalignment made way for the multitasking pitfall, which states that the coach was motivating him for behavior A, but expecting result B. In the 19th century, paleontologists were digging up dinosaur bones in China. They wanted to speed up the process, so they hired villagers to come help. They had this negotiation where if they brought bone fragments to the paleontologists, they'd reward them with bonuses as payment. Well, they got a lot of bone fragments, and the paleontologists were happy. But then they caught on that they found out that the villagers were digging up big prehistoric dinosaur bones and shattering them on the ground to increase their yield. Paleontologists learned an important lesson. Provide the right incentives, or you're just going to get pieces of what you really want. Another way to fail in providing incentives is to increase your benchmarks too frequently. If Tim Hardaway were to know that next year he would need to double his amount of assists just to get last year's bonus, and then do it again the next year, it would lose the motivation for doing it in the first place. And it would lose the outsized gains you would get from the performance he would normally get by trying to hit that benchmark. So he falls victim to the ratchet effect, which essentially states that the more frequently you increase your benchmark, the lower its motivating effects. Sergei Bubka, who is Ukraine's most decorated pole vaulter, he was incentivized by his country to go out there and bring fame to his country by breaking world records. Well, he went to track meets, and he realized quick that he didn't want to beat his last benchmark by too much, or else he'd have difficulty beating it the next time. So he had a very successful career, beating his own world record 35 times, but never by more than an inch. Fellow Toastmasters, incentives drive behavior. And implicit in that, it can be very motivating. If you were Tim Hardaway's coach, with 10 seconds on the clock, the end of the NBA Finals. You were down by 1 point. Would you give the ball to your star shooter when you knew that he was incentivized to pass?